treatment. It gives money to help people come in compliance with business regulations and get up and licensing. So it has a whole funding piece that I think is an important complement to what's being rolled out here and that is missing in the state legislation.
I'm going to let, we need to get back to the audience, but John, really quickly, I know you're
Very quickly, there's a distinction without a difference between the two initiatives. The Parker initiative does permit vertical integration throughout the entire industry. It is the Walmartization of the industry. And what's illuminating is one of the original supporters who supports legalization of the 3 bills that were passed said, gee, why didn't you just legalize recreational marijuana and adopt all of the other controls that are in place in the 3 laws that were passed? The response from the campaign director to this person was, no, our funders have a different view and we have to tailor this to meet the needs of our funders. So the Parker Initiative doesn't name the specific beneficiaries, but it creates the same big tobacco structure.
Okay, so we had a lively discussion on the initiative. It started out as a consumption question. I just want to really quickly, we held a transportation stakeholder meeting and we invited the California Highway Patrol to come and speak. And this issue definitely came up and there were a lot of great questions about intoxication and actual various tests that they can conduct. And this is definitely, hopefully soon, you know, we can get some solid science and come up with some decent tests. Not really sure what other states are doing. Need to do a little research, but that's just wanted to give our take from our transportation stakeholder meeting. And thank you for being so patient. Go ahead and ask a question.
My name is Emily Myers, and I run a cannabis retail operation in Southern California. And I'd like to ask the panelists' thoughts on the creation of a delivery-only license type, because it seems as though that would help solve some of the challenges that we're facing. To Mr. Lovell's point, there's a not in my backyard phenomenon going on where municipalities don't want dispensaries there and they don't want to issue licenses for them and they don't want the, all of the potential ramifications that might come along with that. Having a delivery-only operation obviates many of those problems. To Ms. Dodd's point, the access, patient access being a primary consideration, delivery is certainly the most convenient, accessible way for people to get their medication. And with the Board of Equalization, and really all of us as California residents, the tax revenue that is likely to come in from this will be profound because it is in alignment with Californians' actual behavior and consumption habits. The sales for online retail are beginning to supersede those for brick and mortar retail. Californians, especially because of our traffic dilemmas, particularly in Southern California, and of course the Bay Area as well, prefer to have things delivered instead of driving. And fourth, it is also congruent with our heritage here in California of being technological innovators because it's e-commerce based. So the idea of creation of a virtual dispensary or delivery-only license type seems like it would solve some of the challenges we face and be potential middle ground that we could agree upon and release the stranglehold of delivery being tied to those brick and mortar dispensaries. Could I ask for the panelists' thoughts on this?
Yeah, I mean, I'll just start. I mean, I am not an expert in any means or history on this, but that is the reality. And I think we need to plan for delivery services. Some people like the privacy to be delivered in their homes. They don't necessarily want to go to an actual location. And there are some people that want to go to the actual location and see and touch and feel. I mean, it's just like going to a bank. Do you trust the computer to do all your electronic banking, or do you actually want to go and make sure the teller is, taking your deposit and giving you your cash back? So I think it has to be part of the conversation. I don't know if the legislators are, but I think you need to bring it up, especially like traffic congestion these days. I know my husband orders everything off of Amazon. We get boxes every single day. He does not want to go shopping. I, on the other hand, like to go shopping because I like to see and touch and like take it home with me and not have to wait. So, I think it's just going to have to be an option, and I hope everybody is talking about it, but I haven't really followed up.
Just to clarify, I agree with 100% with what you said with the needs for that service out there. That is the way, we are moving. I think the answer is actually better education, because the way, our CCIA's General Counsel Christine Koja and I last year worked directly with the governor's office on the definition of dispensary to make modifications. So if a local government wanted to issue a delivery-only license under that definition, they could. Long Beach has done it. A few other towns have started to do it. And I see what I see as the problem is sort of a lack of education on that issue. Sure, it might help to have it clarified, but they can do it right now as it is. It's just we need to get the governments better educated. We're working on our own on model ordinances for our members so they can go out to those local governments and get it done now.
I believe in the last month, to address your question, an amendment was put forth in the state legislature, Amendment 1575, to allow for delivery services without the necessary brick and mortar. So there you go. I don't know very much about it. It does require a location, but that would be necessary anyways for a distributor to have a location for processing and so forth. But it addresses that exact issue.
And just to clarify that, it's called virtual with the language in AB 1575. But basically, it's just a non-storefront facility that's treated as a retailer. And I believe the BOE, we treat delivery as retailers as well.
Hi, Dr. Hilling again. I have a comment on the delivery service. I just wrote 4 recommendations for people that could barely bring in the patient. I actually do house calls for that specific reason. When a caregiver goes to a dispensary for that patient, they can't get in. They have to bring the patients in. So now I'm doing house calls on patients. They can't get the medicine. The delivery service is the perfect option because the caregiver is there, the patient is there, the person delivers it, verifies them, and brings them their medicine. So that's my comment.
Do we have another audience question? And just really quickly, audience, please, just a question form, definitely, so we can comment about it.
Yeah, I was going to go to question form, no worries. Lauren Silverstein, I'm a medical marijuana advocate, consultant, and attorney for the last 23 years. Worked in numerous states, Colorado, Nevada, state of Maryland, on a bunch of these issues and regulations, and very much appreciate what Eric and Cal Heritage has put together here and all the speakers that have come in today. This is the exact dialogue that needs to take place all the time. It's interesting that Aaron is separating John Lovell and Tamar Todd. So I think that's sort of funny. There's water in between the two of you. That being said, I really appreciate that law enforcement is here. I also appreciate that Tamar's here to correct some ambiguities that are floating around. Obviously, the hottest topic that I heard being spoke about up here is federal. My concern is that as we go through these things looking at states and medical marijuana and talking about the Parker Initiative, is that this passes the giggle test, and that we understand that, and I know this is what John sees, that medical marijuana, the next step is recreational. I don't think anybody kids themselves that that's going on. So my bigger question is as we're doing this, whether it's the Parker Initiative or what have you, what are the plans to be as transparent as possible that medical will go down the road to recreation? Taking into consideration what we've talked about a little bit I don't think that, we've talked about Walmartization and vertical integration. They are not hand in hand. Vertical integration is smart business. It is not Walmartization. So I ask the question because I'm a realist. I understand what goes on. I've looked at the different states. I've studied them all. And my question is how do we work together as we move through medical marijuana, which I think is happening in November, no matter what. It's been here. It's just about being regulated properly. But how do we move down the road together to work on really the federal question of recreational use down the road? Because I see the abuses in the system. I'm an advocate, but I'm not blind. And we can't have people going in and saying that their ankle hurts and getting a script, because that's where this doesn't pass the giggle test and becomes a problem that society won't address. Hopefully I've framed that well enough. I don't want to pontificate here. So, thank you.
It goes back, we spoke earlier about lobbying, Congress. I mean, it has to be an effort. Whether that's like a multi-state approach or grassroots effort, that process happens, and will they? And I think maybe eventually it'll be either descheduling or rescheduling. I don't know, but it's probably like something like that, and let the states do what they're going to do. So, that's how I see it.
To answer the transparency question on moving forward, I think it's sort of a two-part. First part is you definitely want to, you do want the government to have, open meetings on the issue, on the drafting and the reg writing process. But you also need to sort of proactively reach out and get involved too. You can't expect the organizations to you can't expect CCIA to go knock on the door of every industry or every business in the entire state and say, hey, here's what we're doing. You have to get involved as well. And so active involvement and calling on the government and calling them out when you do find out if something did happen that wasn't transparent, they did cover them up. Go to the watchdog groups, call them out on it. But it's going to take an act. You're going to have to be actively involved in the process.
And I think with our stakeholder meetings, we've put it on YouTube so that everyone can watch it, even if you couldn't take off that specific Friday to come to Sacramento. I'll make sure that they are easily accessible on our website, on our BOE website. But that's a way of keeping transparency, I think, because we do bring panelists like this, and people are able to kind of see what the experts are thinking and talking about, and therefore the policymakers hopefully are also listening instead of doing it behind closed doors, and then laws come out or regulations, and you're like, how did that come out? They didn't even address delivery services. Well, that's part of what we're all trying to do here is participate and educate. And I think someone is videotaping this seminar today, and I'm all for that. When people say, oh, you're coming to speak, is it okay? I'm like, absolutely. Because that's the only way we're going to actually learn and be able to educate everybody else.
And then just to chime in on the broader point, I think CMA is hoping that this follows the general trend of alcohol prohibition, where, back in the day, said no alcohol under any circumstances. You used to be able to get a prescription for alcohol position. You had that going on percolating around. You had a lot of bootlegging operations that led itself to organized crime syndicates and what have you. And we all know the story from there. I think our hope is that as California takes the lead, other states sort of take this issue on, we begin to send signals from the federal government that hey, this is not, our current policy is not working. I can just tell you, at least from our perspective, the involvement a few years back from John's clients and the local government's clients on finding something they can say yes to. In our view, that was a game changer. That was big. They hadn't done that before. There were problems with all the other approaches, and John doesn't give himself enough credit. He's a powerful force in the Capitol. And so their realization that they wanted to get in front of this and produce their own proposal, while it wasn't perfect in our eyes, the fact that they were sitting down and saying, we can say yes to something, that's a big deal. I feel like as we continue to build momentum, more folks that haven't historically been at the table on this issue are going to be at the table.
I would just like to say there's a provision in AB 266 that it's a may, not a shall, but about an advisory committee that Department of Consumer Affairs convening an advisory committee with stakeholders from government and the industry. I really think, I believe it was a May throughout most of the processing. Someone correct me if I'm wrong. Shall,
It was a shall,
yeah.
but to keep it into the end,
Yeah,
it had to make it a May.
Yeah, it was removed at the end. So I believe that's an important process, and I know just some of the folks I know, Department of Consumer Affairs, that the way the regulatory process works is they draft regulations and then it goes through an extensive public comment period. So that will definitely be an opportunity for all of you to come and comment about those regulations. It's very public. And I assume that the other state agencies will follow suit.
I wanted to say that there is movement and there is hope, and it's at a tipping point, I feel. I've been watching the issue for a long time.